Hello, welcome back to another video. Hello, hello, hello. The comment on the last video was that I needed a microphone, so here it is. I hope that it works. I have to sync up the audio and all of that stuff, so hopefully it will work okay. I'm also looking at how to get captions on here because that would probably be helpful. So I'm going to carry on with a couple of questions that I've had sent through. Because, as I said before, I want to try and answer them, and I don't always know where the best place or the best kind of arena for that is. So let's hope it's here. So the first one, which I think is a really important question, especially like as a teacher, I hear, I talk to a lot of my friends are teachers, and I hear from them that this is becoming a thing that they notice a lot in younger people. And I think it's always been true, but the question is, why is the usual first reaction to be defensive, and why can't some people accept that they're wrong? It's a great question, and I think it's easy to jump into that kind of cliche of like, oh, it's a young person thing, and I don't. Sometimes I do. I know I do that, and I don't ever mean to, because actually most of the things that we find are idiosyncratic or unusual or frustrating about other people, they stay the same through adulthood. It is a childish trait to be defensive and to kind of try and fight immediately rather than acknowledge the wrong that you may have done. But it's not to do with being a child. It's to do with your ego states, right? And I would like to do a video about this because I talked to some of my classes about it, and I think hopefully they found it useful, and they asked me some good questions about it, so I'll try and make that in. But basically, you have your three ego states, right? The pack model of ego, which is parent, adult, and child. And so being in child mode, or child state, if you like, is where people find themselves very often. And it depends how long an answer you want to this question. Like, I could do your whole 15 minutes about this, but then it would get into kind of, what's our primal brain wired to do, and how come we're, on the lookout for a potential threat all the time. Basically, the bottom line is your brain is programmed to do one thing above all else, and that's to keep you alive. And, we can argue about why that is. The most obvious answer, or the most common answer, sorry, is for reproduction and furthering the species, and perhaps that's it. I have no idea, but your brain is designed to keep you alive, and therefore is designed to keep you safe, which means it is hyper alert to potential threat. So this, we could go back across the 5,000 years since recorded history began, up to the 7 million years since humans digressed. What's the word? Like, I can't even think what the word is. This is embarrassing. I'm supposed to be an English teacher. When we kind of separated from our common ancestors, you could go back to the 220 million years of since mammals existed, and and so on and so forth. From there, so I'm not going to try and do that, because I'm not an anthropologist, and I'm not a clinical psychologist, and I'm not a historian. But what we used to be afraid of, and what we used to be hardwired to guard against, was sudden attack, right? Because that's something that is, we're generally speaking, humans are strong and can fight and can run. That doesn't mean you're safe from everything, obviously, but it's a list of advantages, not least being bipedal for the speed that it gives us, and also for various other things. But our brains are still evolved at a level that is ready for farming and walking around pretty much everywhere. If you think like the advances that have happened in even my lifetime, probably in your lifetime, certainly if you think about grandparents or great grandparents, the advances that have happened in that lifetime is too quick for our brain to process. It's why social media at its worst does such a damaging job to your mental health and to mine and to everybody else's, among other reasons, obviously. But it's basically it's designed to manipulate a brain that isn't evolved enough to cope with what it's doing. Anyway, the point is that if you go back, say, 500 years, which is evolutionarily nothing, right? It's a blink of an eye. you find yourself in what, the 1500s. So you would probably be living, you would probably be farming, probably in a relatively small community. You would be missing a lot of things that we have now, and you would have to look out for things like, say, snakes or sudden attack from, I mean, not in the UK where I'm from, but in parts of the world, wild beasts or something big that could eat you. Anyway, the point of that is that it means that for a lot of us, our default position when we're in a location where we might be vulnerable is defensiveness. And of course, school and, kind of educational establishments, and even as adults, your job to a degree, and certainly your relationships, and that could be with your parents, or it could be with a partner, it could be with, friends. If you don't feel fully safe in that space, then first of all, you might be right. And that's important. It's not necessarily a case of you just have to let your guard down and let the whole world happen to you. But also, it means that you are waiting for the attack to come. Now, it's not going to come from a snake. It's not going to jump out of the bushes at you. So your body is primed with adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormone, to get you ready for having to react quickly and probably to run away. Now, obviously, the podcast bros will not tell you this is the right answer, because they'll tell you that you should fight people and that you should do all that. The best way to win a fight or to survive is to run away, right? Like 99% of the time, or whatever it is. I don't know. I haven't been attacked by 100 snakes yet, so maybe I'll keep count and I'll let you know when it comes around. But fundamentally, you got to get away, which means you can't be thinking about other things, which means you can't be... And also, it means that you have to be prepared to defend yourself if necessary. And you can't waste a load of time thinking about it or overthinking about it or over-rationalizing how that feels. So your brain and you put your body on alert mode. Now, that's why our first reaction is to be defensive. And the worst thing about that is, because our cognitive function is compromised by that state that we're in of heightened tension, and it's very often very reasonable that we're in that state, by the way. Children who have abusive relationships, or very, very difficult, very argumentative or combative relationships with their parents or their siblings or their teachers or their peers at school or with themselves, it's very understandable that you would be in that state. This is not about there's no easy answer to this where you just chill out and everybody sings Kumbaya around a fire and we all get on really well. We're wired to be defensive. I still do it now, and I'm in my 40s, although I like to think of it as my late 30s, my very late 30s, very late indeed. So that's why our first reaction is often defensive, because we see a lot of things as a threat. And most people, I would say, most aggressors, for want of a better word, are not that good at getting their point across. Because let's say, as a teacher, I will snap at students sometimes. I'm not saying that that's how I should do it. I know it isn't. But there are times when my management of the situation is not as good as it could be. And their management of the situation is certainly not as good as it could be, because they are young and their brains aren't fully evolved yet. And I think I should do a video about that as well. Like the way of how a conversation can easily switch from productive and collaborative into aggressive and combative. So let's say I see a kid playing Roblox on his computer or her computer, or throwing something at a friend, or whatever it might be. If I say to them, don't do that, especially in front of other people, then I'm spotlighting them for a negative thing. And on some level, they know that that's my job, and I don't try and do it aggressively. I probably made that mistake when I was a younger teacher, I guess. Well, I certainly don't try and do it now. But what they see is threat. Right, I'm in a position. I'm theoretically in a position of authority. However seriously that's taken, I can contact home. I can send them out of the class. I can make their life more inconvenient or unpleasant if I put them on detention or do this or do that or the other. And I'm calling them out, if you like. And so you've got the added thing of attack and humiliation, right, or embarrassment, which then generates shame, which is an emotion that I feel we're just not taught to experience anymore. And that's really, really worrying, because you have to understand how to process shame. It's horrible. It really sucks, but you still have to feel it, because if you don't, you'll stay defensive forever. And the thing is that if somebody's attacking you, defending yourself is perfectly understandable. And if a student hands their homework in 3 minutes late and comes to apologize, and I shout at them and scream down the classroom and embarrass them in front of all their peers, then yeah, they should be defending themselves. That's an unnecessary attack and really an unprovoked level of aggression, right? But because it's so busy and because it's so hectic and because it's so crazy all the time in your life, generally speaking, it's very difficult to process what is and isn't an attack, and your body is kind of ready for attack. So any kind of challenge becomes aggression, and therefore your response to that, or very often the response to that, is defensiveness. And like I say, this is not a teenage thing or a child thing. It's prevalent in people in child state, but adults go there as well. As you'll see if you watch pretty much any celebrity, politician, if somebody is called out for something that is backed up with evidence and kind of, the question may be a fair one, but people respond very badly because they feel like they're being caught by something. So that's where the first reaction thing comes from. Why can't people accept that they're wrong is the second half of that question, and that then links to emotional maturity. I think partly because having to look somebody in the eye and say, I messed up, is really hard. It challenges all your preconceptions about identity and your own strength and the level of competence that you project to the world, because that's one of the things about the social media generation, which kind of now like 20 years old, right? So it's been going for, it's probably 2 generations worth of people, is that we project our lives in a certain way. I tidied up behind me before I made this video. I mean, it's not much, but I'm still projecting that this is my room and it's not a complete mess. It is a complete mess. If I could move this camera, you would see. So the projection thing is very important to people. And anything that challenges that, especially if it's been seen as an act of aggression, is very hard to then reconcile. So, the comment on my last video said, you need a microphone and you speak too quick. And my initial reaction was, like, how dare they? Or like not aggression, but like I was defensive about, well, I didn't have a microphone. But that's not true. I did have a microphone. And in terms of the speed at which I speak, you're right. You're probably right. I'm not trying to go fast, I promise, but I do. And, okay. Now, did they make that comment in good faith as feedback? Or were they just kind of sticking in a comment to be like, haha, look at you? I don't know. I don't know who the person is, right? But the situation, because I don't know them, and because this is a public forum there, and where anybody, it might be one of my students, it might be somebody I know, it might be somebody I've never met before. You don't know what their intention is, so you go into defensive mode. You can learn to accept that you're wrong. And the thing that you have to understand, I think, and that a lot of students have to understand, is that accepting that you're wrong isn't the same as saying it's all your fault. You can make a mistake and get things wrong and it not be wholly your fault. If you react defensively, that's probably wrong. Not always, of course, but it probably is. But you saying that doesn't mean that you didn't feel attacked. It doesn't mean that the person who said the thing that made you defensive did it in the right way. It doesn't mean that everything you've ever done up to that point is negated or made irrelevant. And if it's an opinion, that's a whole different video, because look at the state of public discourse. If it's a fact and you're wrong, you just go, oh, I thought it was this. And then it wasn't. Fine, that's easy. When it's an opinion, it becomes much more emotionally led, and that's very difficult for people. So I think the short answer is, I won't do this very often, I think. The short answer is people can't accept they're wrong because they are hijacked by child state, and usually the simple reason is that they're incredibly arrogant or entitled, but it's usually linked to a deeper psychological issue that is preventing them from acknowledging their position in the world around them and understanding how they function in the society that they're trying to be a part of. So it's not just, it's easy to say, oh, it's because they're so full of themselves, that blah, blah, blah. And some people are like that, of course. And people throw around things like narcissist very easily when people won't accept they're wrong. But it's not that simple. If it was, we'd have solved it by now. What it is people's defenses get stronger and stronger and higher and more developed and more insistent, until they literally can't break them down themselves, because it will destroy their whole sense of self-identity. Okay, well, that was only one question, but it was a great one, and I really appreciate you asking it. So please keep leaving comments, feedback, honest, good faith, or trolling. I don't mind. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about, and let's wait and see what the next video is about. And thank you all very much. Bye.